you're looking for?
So I will call the meeting to order. And
I don't think
Can
you
I?
can without a quorum.
Or
So
can we just not make any decisions without a quorum?
I actually don't believe you're supposed to hold the meeting without a quorum,
Okay.
Brown Act. So we have a couple of people in the audience, so just so they know, we're waiting a few minutes to see if we get a fourth member. Right now, we do not have a quorum, which actually means that we won't be able to hold the meeting. So we're just going to give it a few more minutes and see if we get another one of our Citizens Bond Oversight Committee members to join. So please bear with us.
Is Ken on?
We need Ken
Okay.
or Carla or Alejandro.
Okay.
You got your fourth. Alejandro just joined.
Yay.
So
All
waiting
right.
for him to connect to audio and you can kick off the meeting.
Okay, I call the meeting to order at 6:02. Hi, Alejandro.
Hey, Carol, if possible, could you allow
Hi.
me to screen share so I can put the slides up?
And we're happy to see you, Alejandro. You actually made quorum for us tonight.
Yay.
You're good to go, Kelly.
Are we waiting for something?
Slides.
Gotcha.
We're bringing up the screen now.
All right.
We do have some background noise, however.
Is that me? Yep.
Before you jump into the presentation, looking at your participants, it looks like you do have folks in the audience and one with their hand up.
All right, if we're ready to get started, then we'll go ahead and do a roll call. Cheryl Drinkwater,
Here.
Wade Skills,
Here.
Carla Schneiderman. All right, Ken Berlin. Okay, Alejandro Pimentel.
Here.
All right, Damian Park.
Here.
Oh, sounds like we have somebody else joining. Is it one of the committee members?
Ken's here.
Okay,
It's Ken, sorry, I'm late.
that's okay. I was just taking roll, so I'll give you a chance to do it again. Ken Berlin.
Right, presente.
Excellent. All right, and on your agenda, you'll see a list of the staff attendees as well. And we can go on to approval of tonight's agenda.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
All right, that's a first by Member Park and a second by Chair Drinkwater.
Actually, I would like to also add a comment that I was looking at the meeting minutes and had a question that would be related to the agenda. Should I bring that up in the main minutes or the agenda?
It would be okay to bring it up now. We
Okay.
can always place it in the minutes wherever it should belong.
Okay. In the meeting minutes, there was a request in the discussion with the committee comments about putting Oxford, quote unquote, on the agenda. Was that something that we just could not fit into this agenda because we had other items that were also requested? It's on page.
If my understanding is
Great.
correct, I believe that I believe that Wade had asked for some updates on Oxford, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, we just simply don't have them right now.
That is correct. The board is still talking about bringing it to open session to have conversation around it. But at this point, if we're talking about the Oxford property up on the hill, which I believe we are, there's actually been no board discussion about it. While
Okay.
the board knows that they want to have this discussion, those discussions were scheduled to take place in 2020. And when the pandemic hit, honestly, everything else has continued to get in front of that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I figure there might not be any information to share at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, then I repeat, I second with the approval of the agenda.
All right, so that's a first by, now if I remember right, I think it was Member Park that did the first. And a second by Chair Drinkwater. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. So we have approved the agenda. We will go on to. Sorry, my slides are not cooperating with me here for a second, you guys. Sorry about that. So we will go on to public comment. Do we have any members of the public with their hands raised at this time?
Yes, right. Go ahead, Raina.
Hi, thank you, Damien. Good evening. I'm Rana Cho.
Sorry.
I'm a parent. Oh, sorry. I'm a parent and PTA co-president at Emerson Elementary School in District 8. I attended the facilities subcommittee meeting last week to hear how the funds raised by Bond Measure G were going to be spent to improve our schools. And Facilities Director John Calise presented a list of prioritized projects. At the top of the list was a $25 million parking garage and tennis facility in downtown Berkeley. Meanwhile, at Emerson, we have antiquated ventilation systems during a multi-year pandemic and regular fire seasons. We need new plumbing and paint and other basic infrastructure improvements. The stated criteria for project consideration in Measure G were those which improve teaching and learning outcomes, improve campus safety while promoting a welcoming environment, and correct infrastructure deficiencies. How can we possibly consider spending tens of millions of dollars on an unnecessary parking garage and tennis court facility when our elementary schools are still waiting for basic infrastructure needs to be filled? I implore you to prioritize improving the campuses like Emerson and John Muir to meet the stated priorities of Measure G before considering spending any money on massive new projects, which are frankly lower priority than the health and safety of our students, especially our most vulnerable younger age students. Thank you for your service and hopefully representation of the Berkeley Public School community.
Thanks, Rana.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any other members of the public with their hands raised at this time? All right, sounds like that's it for public comment. We'll go ahead and move on to approval of the meeting minutes. I'm going to go ahead and share those minutes now on the screen. Hopefully folks have reviewed them ahead of time. If you have any questions, feel free to get started while I pull those up.
Okay, I mentioned a couple of those, or one of those items regarding Oxford. There's also a spelling error, very minor. I already sent a message, but at item number 9, Member Schneiderman, probably for the record, should be spelled correctly. Otherwise, I motion that we approve the minutes with that change.
All right, any other comments or a second? And yeah, we're happy to make that spelling correction in the minutes and then we'll reissue them.
I second.
All right, that's a first by Chair Drinkwater and a second by Member Park. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Minutes are
Damien.
approved.
By the way, Damien is spelled an A too, is a couple of those, but
Well, we will make that correction as well.
oh, that's it. Sorry.
Not a problem. All right, going back to our slides. We will go on to bond project prioritization process. So we do have a guest here tonight, and it is Marcus Hipster, who participated in the initial planning of the bond projects. And he wanted to give you guys some information. There was a question raised about how the projects were prioritized and what did that process look like and how did we get to the bond project list that we have at this time. And so Marcus is here today to talk about really about not projects in specific, but about the procedure and the due diligence that took place in making that project list. So Marcus, I have your slides ready. So you can just let me know when you want to advance and I'll move you along.
Great. Well, thank you all for having me here. I'm glad to be part of the process of this meeting. I'm going to give you I'm going to call this a brief overview because I know we've only got 10 minutes for this particular item, but I'm trying to make it as comprehensive as possible. Let you know what the process was for the development of for the project list, the prioritization as we developed it. How we came to the original analysis of what the needs were, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to walk you through that as quickly as I can, but also try and make sure that you have as much information as I can possibly give you in this short period of time. So if you go to the next one, the process for the development of the project list started back in 2018. In June of 2018, we started meeting with the superintendent's work group. That was a group that was developed or put together by then Superintendent Donald Evans, included board members, district staff, union representation, superintendent, facilities. When we started, Lou Jones was still, he had been gone and was back as the interim director of facilities. And then toward the middle of the process, Mr. Calise joined us and finished up we all finished up the work together. The first step in the process was to have this meeting and then to talk about the goals. We're going to talk about that in just a second. From there, we did a two-step assessment process. Part of it was an infrastructure assessment. So we had a partner, was then called EMG, is their acronym, and they did a very comprehensive facilities infrastructure assessment. So they looked at mechanical systems, plumbing systems, accessibility, and so on and so forth. And then we also did an academic and operational assessment. We kind of did a top-down and bottom-up approach for identifying what the needs were at every campus and talked to a lot of people in the process. From there, we had a lot of meetings with a bunch of district staff, a lot of meetings on campus sites, and we had a student outreach session in the district boardroom during the identification of what the needs were. From there, we looked at what the bonding capacity is, and I'm going to talk in a minute about why that's important in the prioritization process. For obvious reasons, you only have so much money, but the district has a strategy for identifying what that number is what the number is that they wanted to go out for the bond. And then from there, we prioritize projects to fit within that. It's one of the caveats that we had initially was making sure that we could afford what it was we were planning to do. We looked at prioritization of infrastructure and then also district initiatives, as well as looking at equity to finally develop that preliminary project list. Go to the next one. We talked about what the guiding principles were. These were set up very early on, and this has all been presented before, but just to kind of remind everybody, developing projects in accordance with the board-approved design standards. Now, and I'm sorry, let me back up here for a second. So we have two boxes here, right? The guiding principles is there on the left. Criteria for project consideration is there on the right. The guiding principles, every project we do should make sure that we're meeting all of these bullets. The criteria for project selection is how our project consideration is how we started to weed out some of the projects that we just couldn't get to. There's only so much funds, and we had to come up with some guiding principles for that. So that's what the criteria for project consideration is. I won't read all of them, but I'll just highlight the design, making sure that we're meeting design standards achievable within available funds. That was really important to make sure that we can meet our promises to the community. Promoting equity is obviously extremely important for the district as a whole. And for me personally, making sure that we're distributing work appropriately, making sure we're treating, we're providing projects that treat the student body as diverse in terms of the way they learn and their individual needs. When we looked at I'm going to come back to project criteria for project consideration as we get to the end, because that was we're sort of bookending the process here with both of these boxes. Go to the next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about the assessments, and this is where we did a lot of outreach. We talked to over 150 people, district staff, parents, teachers, principals, the city of the city of Berkeley, Berkeley City College. You can see there on the left all either the district or the broader groups that we talk to in terms of what are the district's goals for these individual areas, making sure that we're looking at the top and what are the guiding, what is guiding the district in moving into the future. We also looked, and as I said, from the bottom up, we talked to the individual sites. We had 90-minute site committee meetings at every site, in addition to walking through every room in every single building, identifying what the physical limitations were. From there, we developed, you go to the next slide, comprehensive assessment document. And this is an example. This is the one we did for Washington Elementary, or at least part of it. Actually, I'm gonna, if you guys can see me on the screen, this is volume 1 of 2 volumes that we developed. We did the assessments to identify what all the needs were at every single individual campus. If you go to the next slide. As we're meeting with the superintendent's work group, we also identified through the district's financial advisor what the bonding capacity was. How much money could the district generate? And the Berkeley Unified School District was committed not to exceed $170.80 per $100,000 in assessed valuation for all of combined GO bonds. That was one of the limitations in terms of the amount of money that we were was going to be available to the district. And the rationale for that was a promise made to the community that they weren't going to exceed that amount. So that was what established the amount of money that the district was going to go out for. And that was our target in terms of the amount of projects that we needed to develop. So if you go to the next slide. Now we know what the needs were and we know how much money we have to spend. So now we have to figure out how do we prioritize and develop this final project list. So the first step was to look at the infrastructure. So we actually prioritized infrastructure because it was a very comprehensive. The method for determining what was necessary was primarily age-based systems. So if you imagine that a mechanical unit is going to be good for 25 or 30 years, then that's what was put into the plan in terms of needing to be replaced. Now, that can all be affected by how good the maintenance is and whether or not those things will actively be replaced. For example, in the report, it would identify that a toilet might have to be replaced in the next 10 years. Well, toilets often last longer than their anticipated lifespan. So we were able to prioritize some of this work within the facilities assessment, it's the infrastructure assessment itself. You can see the prioritization numbers here. We're making sure we're doing 100% of anything identified with fire, life safety, anything with access compliance and safety in general. Building envelope, replacement of roofs and so on and so forth. We looked at 70%. Some of that might be able to be.
I have a quick question about what
Yes.
was in scope when you were doing this. I'm not quite, I realized this was in the past, but I'm not sure when it was. Was wildfire part of what you thought about when you looked at HVAC?
Wildfire was not. This was in 20, we did the work and started in 2018. We finished in 2019.
Gotcha,
was
that's what
the-
I suspected. Yep.
Yeah, that was
Go
the
ahead, Tom.
first year. Sure. That was the first year of the, as you guys, as you all well know, that was the first year of fire season or smoke season. So it wasn't high on the radar at the time. So this is how we identify where we were going to prioritize the infrastructure work, and we ended up with a number of 170 million, which gave us a remainder from 230 to 170. So that's where we're looking at the following, the next round of projects. So if you go to the next slide. Some of the other considerations, we want to make sure that we're supporting demographics. So you may or may not know, but the district changed its classroom loading policy. We used to be a certain loading at K through 3, and then it would change at 4 or 5, typical of most school districts. In the I forget the exact year it was implemented. I believe it was 2016. The district decided to change that and make sure that all the classes were loaded 23-to-1. That impacted the amount of classrooms needed at a couple of schools. In addition to that, we were looking at the prior bond and what projects were swept from that bond. And some of these made it into the project list. Some of them did not, but this was all part of the consideration. If you go to the next slide. Then we overlaid the some of the needs assessments that some of the needs that we identified in our assessment process. We looked at things such as support programs that would enhance STEM CTEs as a major component of some of the work that was going to be done. Student support, the district has a huge history, a great history of providing a lot of support to students without a lot of support spaces. The facilities were needed to catch up with the programs that the district is offering. Looking at revenue generation, are there projects we can develop that would actually increase the amount of money that the district is able to get through matching funds or other grants? And then making sure that we're looking at equity across all the projects that we're developing, making sure that we're looking at equity from campus to campus. So if you go to the next slide. This is where we ended. We started with guiding principles on the left, and then the criteria for the project consideration was on the right. After we've done all this analysis, looking at improving teaching and learning, improving campus safety. In fact, I think one of the commenters read this all earlier, or most of it. Operational efficiencies obviously is going to be extremely important. Expanding options for project-based learning, sustainability goals, which not only is good for the environment, but also improves the operational and general fund. And then correcting infrastructure deficiencies. That's that $170 million money that we were talking about earlier. That's how the project list was developed, or what the guiding principles were for how we developed that list. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Great, thank you. Can we address the one in the chat, which is the final facilities needs assessment completed? Is it available in digital form?
Yeah, I'll address that. I'll address that for you, Damien. Cielo, I think it's Cielo. I always mess up the pronunciation, so I apologize. She emailed that question to me. I just haven't been able to respond.
Okay.
It is, and as soon as I have a chance, I will share that with her.
Facility needs assessment. What's that? When was that from? It sounds like it's from 2018, though. Is it not?
It's from 2018. That is correct.
So it's taken 4 years, or was something wrong?
Nothing. I accidentally sent her a draft when she asked for it the other day, because I have multiple copies in there.
So we have it.
And the draft version 4 that she actually asked for is the final version. It was the version that was approved and then stamped as final later.
Gotcha.
So I have to resend it to her when I have a moment to do that.
Got you. Marcus, can I follow up? Go ahead, Wade. Go ahead, Wade.
How did you know I was going to ask something? Thank you for the presentation. I'm just curious. I learned my brother is an administrator with CTE. I'm just letting you know that, but and I think he does a great job, and I think it's a great program. He did tell me in a conversation we had, just a casual conversation, that there was specific bond money set aside for CTE, and then he has to go out and grant right to fulfill the rest of the funding. I didn't know that. I didn't realize, and I've been on this committee for a couple of years, that there was specific bond money set aside for specific programs. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Yeah, so in the planning sheets that we have shared, they're working drafts, but there's actually allocations, buckets, if you will, for different things. There's projects that were promised to the community by this board, past boards, et cetera. There's projects that made the project list based on everything that Marcus went through. There is money allocated for CTE for every 2 years in each issuance, and that money is allocated also in a way to help CTE do matching grants through CTIG and other federal and state grants that are available. And then there's also money available for technology every 2 years that's sold on a completely different tranche. And the reason that that's sold on a different tranche is we don't believe that, so some districts, and even historically here, they would sell the bond, it's a 30-year bond, and they would issue X dollars to technology. Well, the problem with that, or even with some CTE equipment, is then as a taxpayer, you'd be paying for 30 years for those Chromebooks, or for that, for that network switch, et cetera. So when we sell them on different tranches for items like that, they're sold on a shorter tranche with a shorter payoff, usually a 2-year payoff, that fits into that tax amount of assessed value, where it's fair for the community. We don't expect communities to pay for things long past their lifespan. Does that make sense?
Well, I guess, I think I was asking more generally that when the bond was created, was that the time when you got together and decided which departments get which allotments per year? Is that what you were saying?
It's not, so it's not departments. I just want to clarify that because that's very important. Departments don't get money. The CTE money is specific to CTE projects. So some of the projects that we have built out specifically to support CTE programs, right? We don't pay for the department, we don't pay for staffing, et cetera. That list was created by the Superintendent's Advisory Committee. It was well in the process early all the way through 2018. I joined in 2018 in November. It finished up early 19. And that's what the board used to create the project list that was used when we went out for the bond. And on the project list, you had the marquee projects. The marquee projects are specifically called out in the ballot text of saying Berkeley Unified is going to do this project, this project, this project, et cetera. And those are projects that the board believed it was important to specifically highlight to the community that they were looking to do in order to pass the bond. Additionally, it said, we're also going to do these types of projects at these types of facilities. But the project list had already been created at that point.
Okay, I mean, at some other point, we could have another deeper conversation about that. Damien, I don't want to cut you off. I think we should have a conversation, whether it's now or later, about the tennis courts versus the other things that the woman mentioned earlier. So whether that's now or later, but Damien, go ahead.
No,
Just so the committee knows,
oh yeah, I'll speak. That's fine. I'm not doing tennis. Yeah, we're not
Okay.
doing tennis tonight. But the tennis. Go ahead, Kelly. All right. So yeah, actually, Rana brought up the tennis. I had no idea. But there were some. We'll talk about the fact that we're going to push that off later. It's not on the agenda tonight. I was just curious though for Marcus about what Rana had said though. Did the plumbing and the paint come up during the community outreach to Emerson?
So I can actually answer that if you want, Marcus. It did, and on that project sheet, Damien, it's why there is infrastructure money allocated for Emerson. But what we have to remember is that the way the project list was created was everybody needs something. We know that. No one would argue that, right? But keeping the tax rate where it is, the money is issued not all at once. We don't go to the voters and say, okay, cool, thanks. We're going to take all of that money now.
No, that's fine. So it's coming down the road.
Right, exactly. It's
that's all you need to say. All you need to say, John. So Marcus, can I ask you another question? So hopefully, Rhonda, then that's what's coming down the road. That's great to hear. I don't know anything else about what their public comments were. I guess, does anyone else want to address what Rhonda had said?
Are you, Damien, asking about the tennis?
No, not the tennis part, just about the lack of paint and plumbing. I guess it sounds like it's coming down the road. So
right, okay.
Hopefully that's good enough to satisfy that public comment, at least for now. Yeah, I had another question too for Marcus though. Where is it though? Oh, Marcus, I was curious, what got, in terms of equity, can you speak more to what equity, is there it's hard to define that. I don't know.
It is hard to define. Hard to define. It's we had the debate about what's the difference between parity and equity early on in the process, and really when you come down to it, making sure that you have equivalent facilities to support the students at each campus, particularly at the elementary schools, right? The CDCs, the elementary schools, because they're all very similar. In terms of the type of education they provide. As you get to the middle and middle schools, you start to look at equity becomes not necessarily everybody having the exact same thing, but making sure that the programs that are being offered at those schools are being well supported. Longfellow was a unique case because it was a school of choice. So making sure that they had money to do a variety of things. Looking at the high school and making sure that we're supporting their program. So that was the definition we had of equity, making sure that we're bringing facilities to the same standard, across the board to the best of our ability within the funds available.
And that should mean that Oxford gets the short end of the stick in some senses, since they have such new stuff already, right? You'd assume they wouldn't get much more new going forward. Is that right? I mean, just as an example.
You talking about West Campus, or I mean, what used to be West Campus?
Yeah, so West Campus was done after Marcus had done his assessment, so I will answer that. The answer to that is correct.
Okay,
There's
great.
actually nothing on the long-term planning for that campus
Great.
other than the follow-on project that is scheduled to happen this summer that could not be done as part of the initial project.
Okay.
Are there any additional questions from the committee for Marcus?
I do have one. Marcus, thank you for the presentation. What was the stakeholder engagement process for the assessment that you guys did? Did you guys involve the community, the end users, not only the facilities executive director, and what was the process? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, actually, if you could go back to slide number 4. Question, but I want the visual here to. So the process was a combination of meeting with district staff in their departments, as well as the individual campuses. And when we went to each campus, we asked the principal at that campus to develop a site committee so that they could come in on facilities. The guidance I normally give principals around a site committee is to have a diversity of teachers, somebody from somewhere between K and 3 and maybe somewhere between 3 and 5, have a diversity of parents, hopefully somebody that's got a kindergartner and a second grader or something to that effect. So as you can see, there's a picture there, and I believe that was at Washington Elementary School. We have similar photos of every single site committee that we met with. The meetings were about 90 minutes, and what we did was we asked we have a series of leading questions. What do you love about your school? What do you love about your community? What do you not like about your school? What's wrong with this? Well, what works, what doesn't work? And then the conversation just starts to flow. And you can see my notes. I always take notes with a big Sharpie out in the open so people can see what my comments are. Of course, this is pre-Zoom, thankfully. We were able to do that in person. But as I mentioned, there were in all, the entire process involved about 150 different people. The majority of those were representatives at each site.
Thank you.
Marcus, additionally, to answer Alejandro's question about the public outreach on that, in addition to the meetings at all of the sites, we also we did a huge campaign where we put it out, social media, the PIO did a blast, etc. We held an open session on a Saturday at the boardroom where we actually invited everyone and anyone to come, including kids, right? We got input from kids. We got input from each school. We also got input just from community members, right? So we wanted to bring it beyond these groups at the schools and open it up to the public as well. And that was very well received also, Alejandro.
A really good meeting at Berkeley High School as well. We had a well-attended meeting there in the library.
Any additional questions?
I've got one more. This is pretty much you're showing us broadly how you determine the priorities of the bond money, right? How does something like a BTech kitchen become the project that you engage on versus something else? I mean, I'm sure it's very complicated. Little theater, we had a brief conversation that there's not enough money to finish. How do you juggle those things? That's kind of what I was hoping to hear tonight, was sort of a little bit more.
So I'll answer that because some of those projects are outside of Marcus's scope with what he did. So the BTech example that you gave was actually looking at the CTE projects. So we engaged not only with WIN, with WIN as far as CTE, we also talked to the site. We said, what do you need? We looked around the district to see, even at the middle school, what was really wildly popular with CTE. And what was a link that we were missing at the high school? And one of the and when we talk about the high school, we also talk about BTEC, right? So one of the things that we saw was this disconnect with the Growing Leaders program. And the Growing Leaders was good because it's CTE, but it's also an entrepreneurial class. It touches cooking and gardening, etc. The site wanted it. Furthermore, the site had the space and was willing to open to actually be receptive so that we could actually start using that for not only BTEC, but also the high school, right? So that right there is sort of what drove that as a priority for the CTE program. The Little Theater is actually mentioned as one of the marquee projects because programmatically it needs to be done. Programmatically, they absolutely need the Little Theater. And then when you look at the structural reports and the age reports and everything else, it does need to be done. Now, I just want to clarify one thing that you said, because you said it doesn't have money, we're not doing it. What we said is we're seeing a shortfall because, right, DSA is going to require the house, but we haven't decided that. The district has not decided that they're not going to do that yet, the board. We're still actively looking for ways to fund that. And part of that is seismic mitigation program with the state. It won't fund all of it, but it'll fund a lot of it. So I just want to be clear so that way the rest of the committee or the public doesn't believe that that project has actually been totally removed.
Just because we mentioned Little Theater, I just want to go on the record and say that I think that a district of our size spending 80, 90, $100 million on Little Theater is absolutely insane. I would use the F word modifier in front of insane there. I just wanted to go and just get that on the record because that's my verbatim thought.
So I agree with you. Thankfully, that's not what we're spending. Hang on one second, Cheryl.
Well, it says we're 47 million in, we're 47% done, and we're 40 million in the hole, right?
No. So first of all, we're not in the hole. The total project cost.
Well,
what
sunk
you're
costs.
looking at. Hang on, Ken. I'm getting a little.
Sorry,
feedback.
John. Go for it.
Yeah. What you're looking at on the current projects, Ken, at 56, is actually the classroom wing, and the stage box is being done as part of that. The only reason the stage box is being done as part of that is because structurally they had to do the stage box because of the load bearings that it has on the effect of the classroom wing. That building, if you look at it, you have the large drum and then you have the two legs, one leg being the Little Theater, one leg being the classroom wing. It looks like three buildings, it's not. So the reality is even if you touch something way over on the other side, it has an effect. So that's why we're doing the stage box. The classroom wing had to be done. The classroom wing was 3 different levels. That was actually, or 3 floors, excuse me, that was spread amongst 22 different levels. And with that, it was a huge problem with accessibility. It was a huge problem with safety. It was a huge problem from a seismic standpoint, and there's classes in there. So that's why the classroom wing is actually being done with that. Again, the stage box, it's ancillary. It had to be done in order to do that classroom wing.
The only thing I was going to mention, it's not a big deal. Obviously, that was a very complicated building, but I was at that HY meeting, a site meeting for Berkeley High, and the Little Theater was mentioned, which was why I brought it up last time we had a meeting. What about Little Theater? Obviously, it's a complicated thing, all interconnected. But that building, as I understand it too, is not only a Berkeley High facility, it's also a community facility, or was previously. And isn't it also a historic building? It's protected as well, right? So there's a whole other layer.
Yeah, it's a historic building, not only on the city's historic registry, but actually on the national registry. It's also a WPA building. It was built during that era, and it's certified as such. And then the Little Theater, as you brought up last time, the high school has really been very clear in expressing that programmatically, they need the Little Theater, which is why there was a push to do the Little Theater and not the house. The only reason that the house of the large theater is even in conversation now is because DSA will require it. So the reality is the high school even recognizes we don't need to do the house right now. It would be great, but it's not needed. But from a programmatic standpoint, the Little Theater is. And then when you go back and you look at the structural reports as it relates to that building as a whole, you understand what really drove that project. The classroom wing, the stage box, and then ultimately the Little Theater and possibly the house as well.
There's no mistaking why Marcus put that image of the community theater in his presentation, the first slide, to show the importance of that building.
Yeah.
It could potentially be a revenue generator at some point. You try to factor that in as well, I presume.
It gets considered, but it's not really a part of that equation, Wade, because the reality is with the, even as a revenue generator, even if it was operating as it was in its heyday as a community theater, it wouldn't generate enough revenue to necessarily garner the project, right? So when you look at it from a facilities standpoint, it's what does the school actually need? And to do something that's going to generate revenue, that's great, but that's not one of the primary considerations because it would never create enough.
Can I ask a question to Marcus again? Where'd he go?
He's still
Here, I'm not
there
sure
he
where I am on your
So you're
screen.
good. When you do community outreach, like the picture on the screen there, is it, it seemed like if I were in charge, I would ask the principal, I would have the principal obviously knows for the most part what they need, I would hope, at each school. And so I would say, like, here's what's likely to be done at your school. If you disagree, or, you know, what else should we add to this? Is that, or do you start them off with a blank slate, the community members and the public? As in, like, you don't like fill their heads with this is likely to be done unless you speak up or something like that. And I'm just curious why, or your thoughts about that.
So it's a complicated thing, but we did start with a relatively blank slate. As I mentioned, we start with the what do you like about the school, and
Right.
kind of you start with the do no harm mantra. You start off with what do you like, let's maintain that, and then you start asking questions. Well, what isn't working? And you know, and I've toured every campus, and so before I had this meeting. So I have already a sense of, oh, the drop off here is probably terrible. Am I right about that? And oh yeah, you're totally right about the drop off here. Of course, that's true of every elementary school in existence. But so that's kind of low hanging fruit for me. But I've also identified other areas where I might see problems, and I don't try and guide the conversation, but I do try to ask leading questions so that the important stuff comes out. Typically, I color code my notes. So if you look at the board there, that's all of the handwritten stuff. Red is something that doesn't work. Blue is just information because I want to make sure I understand how they're using the campus. And green are things that they like. Mm-hmm. So if it's red, or in that case pink, because I think one of my pens must have run dry, then that's something that goes into a deficiency list. Now, when we try and say. When we get to the point of trying to identify what projects are going to be done, because it's such a complicated thing with all of these different needs pulling at each other and only a limited amount of money, you don't typically go and say, okay, here's this big project list. We're probably going to do all this, because what that ends up doing is creating false hope and false promises to the community that we're going to do all of this work that everybody says needs to be done. Some of it is a lot of the purely infrastructure maintenance stuff is going to be taken care of. And a lot of the equity piece that we mentioned, and the demographic piece, and providing support services, support spaces for support services is also very important. Along with that other list of all the other criteria. So that's what we use to generate that list.
I wonder if you get more engagement or better engagement if you started with not a blank slate. This is, as in, like, this is likely to get done, but speak up if and then I don't know, because then you wouldn't get comments like you got today, perhaps, because they might have had more, I don't know, I feel like they had more control, or they realized what the constraints were early on. I don't know, maybe that's a side topic, but it strikes me that a blank slate is not the right way to go for something like this, but because there's so much ignorance. I mean, the community has so much ignorance about these issues, and to educate them, right? Even us, right? We have so much ignorance. It's hard to get us up to speed. And then, so that's all. Nothing more needs to be said about that. Just curious.
Mm-hmm.
There's another question, by the way, in the chat about, and I feel like we should address it as well. It says Emerson's going to be, the air systems are not going until 2028. Can they be expedited? So is it they don't want to be, we don't want to expedite those because they're not as important as
I want to be careful here for a second because there's a period of time for public comment
Yeah.
and in the meeting, and the members of the public are invited to raise their hand and comment during that time. That's the time we're beholden to that
I
format
know I'm not
due to the
beholden.
Brown Act.
No, I know I'm not beholden. I'm just, it strikes
I
me
know,
that-
I said we are
We are
beholden to follow those rules.
No, but I'm not beholden to asking a question about Emerson getting an air system in 2028, right?
But you are repeating a question that was asked by another member of the public after the public comment period is gone.
But she could have gotten that question to him in any number of ways.
Okay, so
She could have
moving-
passed a note in a meeting, right?
Moving forward, Ken, you're 100% right. The Q&A chat feature will also be disabled because we are really skating on the edge of the Brown Act
I agree. That's
here.
probably the right thing to do. And then we can emulate more what face-to-face would have looked like after public comment.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
All right.
So, and Damian, if you want to reach out, I'm happy to answer that question to you anytime outside of this meeting. So it's just with it being outside of public comment, it's not the appropriate time.
So I am curious if more or less 170 million have been allocated. Is that more or less correct as it stands with the infrastructure and the list that we saw?
No,
Okay.
that's incorrect. 380 million has been allocated. All of the dollars are listed on the project list, but project lists, aside for the marquee projects that were specifically listed in the bond language, all of the projects on the project list are designed to be fluid, because the reality is what the school district needs in 2018 is very different from what it may need in 2024 or 2020 for that matter. So the bond language is written in a way where it says, okay, we are going to do A, B, C, and D. That's the message to the voters. Furthermore, we are going to address these other types of projects, et cetera. Now, the bond project list has been created, and if the board wants to say, okay, you know what, put on this other project, then what happens is we have to go back, and it's not a matter of just adding a new project. It's a matter of taking away other projects. And we have to present options to the facilities subcommittee and ultimately the board on how they'll reallocate that bond.
That was exactly where I was going with my question. So thank you. When Oregon when you have to move out of Oregon, you've got to figure out how to fund the operations in a different way. And so there's flexibility built in. Thank you. That was my question.
I'd also make a recommendation that, this presentation was kind of supposed to focus on the methodology to getting the project list. If we'd want to follow up with another agenda item where we went over the project list from more of a financial standpoint, that might be a good idea, just because I'm thinking time-wise, we've kind of blown this one out of the water, which is okay. But I think we might get a better chance to go into more depth on the financials on an upcoming meeting, give the opportunity to talk about that in more detail.
Sounds like it. Oh, am I on? Sounds like an agenda item for next time or the time after. Thank you.
All right, noted. All right, any other questions for Marcus before he takes off?
I guess one quick question, was there CBOC input at different points during this process or at any point?
No, because the CBOC's purview is to actually look at the financial audits. We've talked about that, right? And yes, the ed code is written that the CBOC may do this or may do that, but its charge is specifically to review the audit and report to the public.
However, we are allowed to do these site visits and observe. And I did do a couple of these. The Berkeley High one is the most memorable because I had a Berkeley High student at the time, my daughter. But we are invited to many things.
Yeah, and there was members of the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, as I recall, who were actually members of past CBOCs for the district. Having them on there as an actual member, I don't know if that would be a conflict or if that was something that was ever considered, but there were people who are very active in the community and also in the school district and were previous members of the CBOC who sat on that Superintendent's Advisory Committee.
And that's pretty common with most school districts. CBOC members tend to be active members of the community. So you see them at a lot of events, listening sessions, board meetings, things
Yep.
like that, which is welcome. All right, final call for Marcus. Oh, Shanita, you unmuted. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to just clarify, guys, that for BTEC, that CTE project, that's in Measure I and not in Measure G.
That's actually good to know.
Thank you very much.
The deciding factors were the same though, so you're aware, Wade.
Yeah, I'm just trying to do my job of overseeing by asking.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think it was a great question. How did it get on the list, right?
Yes,
That's
exactly.
a wonderful question.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, Marcus.
Yes, thank you, Marcus.
Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
All right, hoping everybody can still see my slideshow, that transition worked. Are we good?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, capital projects log. It has been included in your packet of documents for this meeting. There is, I think, minimal to no change in this document. I'm happy to throw it up on the screen if people have questions. If not, we could maybe make up a couple minutes on this item. Chris, any changes that you wanted to note, or is it pretty much the same?
It's pretty much the same.
All right, so if anybody, members have questions, I'm happy to throw it up on the screen. If not, we can go to the next item.
I'm okay with moving on.
Excellent. All right, so now we're on to review of bylaws. So if you give me one moment, I'm going to pull up the recommendations put forth by Member Park. And I don't know if anybody else was involved in that, so sorry if I'm not giving you your due. Give me 1 second, I'll get that pulled up.
Should we be calling them guidelines at this point or something other than bylaws, Damien? Or what's sure?
I believe there's two items on the agenda
Yeah.
right now, one for bylaws, one for guidelines.
Gotcha.
Give
So
me just 1 second.
yeah, let's share the maybe share the guidelines first. I can share I have them too. I don't know if
I can go ahead and share it. I have it here. So are we saying we want to go out of order on the agenda?
it's not. Yes, it's kind of. So with the guidelines, just have some suggestions for why the bylaws are written as they are. I can mostly speak to that. And so what we've done is the bylaws. All right, and let's scroll down a little bit on that one to keep on going. Sorry, the next page. There we go. So yeah, the independence discussion. So so anyway, I'll refer to this in a second, but on the bylaws, we have clarified everything that was, I think, in dispute, except for section 18, which discussed how we're going to form the agenda. So I don't think, and this is with Wade and Ken do this as well. And I believe, I don't want to put words in the rest of the members' mouth, but I believe the rest of us are okay with everything except for section 18, which covers the agenda process. So about section 18, and is what I have on the guideline screen here. I want to give you a sense of why section 18 is important to me. And
I'm sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm a bit confused. Are we talking bylaws or are we talking guidelines now?
I'd like to have them both. Let's leave on your screen is fine. So on the independence idea right here, last meeting, Ty Alper suggested that we follow the process of the agenda from the P&O committee and the PAC committee. And I read through those, and my wife is on one of them, used to be. And the key difference though, and Ty did not understand this, I don't think, and I emailed him and he has not gotten back to me yet about this, but the key thing that's on our committee is different from theirs is that we're supposed to be independent. So if you ask, what does an independent committee mean? If you scroll down here, we ought to be able to answer yes to the following 12 questions. So first in that list is, can we prepare our own agenda? And you can see which ones I've checked off as what we cannot do. So can you approve your own bylaws? Do you have your own budget, etc. here? So I don't believe we are independent. And this is I think a fundamental issue, and which is why I place so much importance on adding something to our bylaws which stipulates that we are in control of our agenda. Anything other than that effectively means we are not an independent committee. And so what I did then, so we can flip to section 18 in the bylaws now, please. And so on the very bottom is in red, is the only thing that's of any sort of importance anymore. Not importance, but I mean controversial, I suppose. Everything else I think is there's no controversy in accepting the remaining sections. So what I did here was I tried to suggest a way that we might go forward. It seems like we want to vest the right to construct our agenda with the chair. But I suggested as well that that the chair's in charge. Again, they can delegate that responsibility to some other member, or if that member does not want to, then we can obviously say have the district fill in. And of course, we can use the district to help us out with timing. We're not going to rush things through. Obviously, we're not going to put things on the minute, last minute on the agenda with and then clearly we have an incentive to kind of give the district enough leeway. But I think we ought to have the power, and there ought to be a expectation that any member can add any item to the agenda. I think that's at the heart of an independent committee. So for the other members, I'm curious what your thoughts are about that.
I'll go first, as Ken. I mean, I agree. I think agenda setting is really important. And I think that we're all, I think we can take guidance as to what our statutory responsibilities are. And if things that are irrelevant or outside of our power appear on the agenda, we can deal with that as a group, and we can deal with that, with help from the district. So I'm in favor of taking the committee as an independent committee, taking the responsibility of setting our agenda.
Alejandro or Cheryl, any thoughts, or Wade?
I could jump in real quick. I support completely our independence to the degree that we are supposed to be independent. So I really appreciate that, Damien. I have mentioned a few times before that personally I'm comfortable with the way that the agenda has been created. So I'm okay with. I love the independence aspect that you're pushing for. I support that, but I'm comfortable with the way the agenda has been created. I do feel like we are able to create or get our items on the agenda. Sometimes it takes a little longer because we may have to kick it to the next meeting, which I'm kind of okay with as well. Just one issue I did have, and I've heard it before, John mentioned that I think our job is to approve the audit and I'm putting words in your mouth, John, but it was something like that. But I disagree. I think I think we have a much broader scope than just look. I don't think we need to be controversial or adversarial, but I think we have an oversight obligation, and the independence is an important part of that versus just being told where to look and how much to look and how little to look at it. So enough said on my part. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Cheryl.
It's Alejandro.
Oh, go ahead, Alejandro. You were next.
No, I agree with Wade, and I think I don't have an issue with the agenda or as it is work right now. I think we get our points across the staff, so I think it gets done. I'm just curious about Damien and Ken, what the current process of this district setting the agenda is an issue. I understand the independent portion of it, but what do we want to discuss that we haven't discussed it within our current process? That's one. And the other one, I mean, probably that's my only question for you both. I'm okay either way, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Hello.
for me, to answer your question, Alejandro, I think it's about timing and our ability to exercise our oversight and review early rather than later. You know, I believe that the power in our review is, I mean, you know, it's severely limited. It's mostly limited in being able to bring our views to, you know, to the district and, you know, and to the citizens, and sort of, you know, highlight these things as we see them. I mean, I'm hoping this, you know, this tennis court thing, I know tonight's not tennis night, but I'm hoping that can kind of serve maybe as a model, not maybe, you know, maybe not for how we do it, for sort of how we can focus something that we find interesting and we believe was within our purview, to be at issue within this committee, and how we can kind of, you know, how we can communicate that to the district, and how we can work with voters and stakeholders in the district to kind of bring that to their attention. So for me, agenda setting and sort of, you know, the guidelines that Damien has put together are kind of about getting ahead of these things and knowing what's coming down the pike, rather than, you know, reviewing the money, you know, once it's millions of dollars spent, like, you know, like this, like, you know, the spreadsheet that's in this evening's pack.
I just want to.
Hang on, Kelly.
Sure, yeah, I'm
Cheryl's been trying to
sorry.
get in. Cheryl.
Yeah, I agree with Wade and Alejandro. I mean, the process is that we can add anything to the agenda. Will it get on there? Has to be sorted out. But I feel like, you know, this independent, at first I thought, where does this language come from? And I went back to your guidelines and I see that there's this independent, well, we are independent. We are separate from staff. 5, 6 of these line items that you are meant to list that have to be yes are all crossed off. So I don't know how many, if it's supposed to be 100% or not, but what I hear a little bit is that you want to bring your agenda to the committee. And I don't know if that is our role in this committee, to bring a personal or a community agenda to this committee. Am I wrong? I mean, we are not making the decisions on the bonds. We are monitoring. We are making sure the money is spent appropriately.
Right. No, I have no issue with that. That's
Okay.
not my, okay.
All right. I just wanted to, it was sort of
No,
like
I have no issue with that
opinions
either.
/ comments there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we need, and we will, you know, and I wouldn't do otherwise than operate, you know, strictly within what the statute lays out for us. I think it's all right there in the ed code.
Right. And you are also, I mean, all of us are also community members and are invited to go to these public meetings and you know, and also voting. We have voting power as well for the bonds.
Yes, yes.
So there is other venues.
Right, but I guess let's go back to the point here. What is the problem? Again, there's a number of items we don't have, you're right, on that crossed off list. I just don't see why some of the others are opposed to us having the ability to create our agenda. What are you?
We do create our agenda. We just don't administer it because there are Brown Act laws and there's timing issues and there are a lot of people involved.
And
I think we can.
And we're not staff as well, though. So that's, I mean, we can, our job is not to create the agenda. That's the staff's role.
Yes.
As I understand it, but we can, if we need to bring issues to the agenda, I don't think that hasn't been an issue, wasn't it?
Well, it has actually. There has been a couple of cases where it's not.
What is one of them? Just one example.
Well, tonight was partially an option. You could argue that's why I didn't say anything about it, but that parking structure, by the way, it's a tennis and parking structure. It's the parking structure, which is, I believe, more of the wasteful aspect, but regardless, I wanted to talk about that. And there were some issues with what we wrote up.
We wrote up?
Ken and I were constructing something about the parking structure, something that we're going to review and bring to the committee here to discuss.
Right, we wrote just a simple one-page document.
Yes,
and if I may,
Kelly and John suggested that we don't talk about it because there's some inaccuracies there, and that's fine. I guess that's kind of okay, but it's also the case that it's okay to have inaccuracies sometimes as well.
So
I'm
that's,
sorry, with all due respect, I want to clarify this. I tried to say it earlier and I'm going to say it now. What we are not saying in this is that the email also said that we were happy to agendize this for the next meeting and offered to meet with you to discuss the inaccuracies before it was agendized. So this is a public meeting and I want to make sure that I am super clear in how the district was represented in the statement you just made. We absolutely welcomed the agenda item. I believe my words are, we were happy to agendize it. But that first we wanted to meet with you. That was the only condition of getting it on the agenda without we have a discussion first. So I
And
just
that
need
is
to be clear on that.
And that is
And-
consistent with what I said, Damien, as far as we can offer any agenda items if we have ideas for the agenda, and then they have to be fit in, or it may not be immediately, like right when you need it to be, but it will be agendized. And that was why I mentioned about the Oxford. You know, I saw it in the minutes. I remember talking about it. I didn't see it on the agenda. I checked all that information before I just spoke off the top of my head. I made sure I was saying something correct, and I just said, "Where is it?" Okay, it was pushed down the into the future because there wasn't
Right.
really any comment.
I think those are arguments for us setting our own agenda, right? If time is of the essence, then we should be able to set our own agenda.
Ken, if I may. So I'm not going to weigh in on you guys setting your own agenda or not, but what I will say is that the document that you guys prepared, what Kelly just pointed out, there are inaccuracies. With you doing that and basically sending all that stuff up and saying this is going to be on the agenda, you are taking a document potentially that is inaccurate, putting it into public record, and then you are misrepresenting not only the project in the district, but the committee. By working with staff, every item that you ask for to be on the agenda does get on the agenda. Now, the other thing that I'll say is that the one thing that you could argue that you might be able to change is, well, it's going to get on the agenda right away. And I would push back on that absolutely to Ty's point of this committee cannot direct staff what to do, right? You can ask us for stuff and we'll give it to you. But our workload and our capacity beyond working with this committee really dictates how quickly we can deliver something for you.
I don't dispute that.
So,
I feel like we're getting sidetracked.
Damien,
We're getting
let me finish.
sidetracked though. We're
We're
talking
not.
about minutia. I want to keep on the big point here. The parking structure, I did not dispute, Kelly. I did not explain it very well. It's fine. It probably shouldn't have been talked about tonight. I'm happy. I appreciated what you reaching out to me. That was just a minor point, and I didn't explain it very well. But I would like to get back to the point here, which is we can satisfy both me and the rest of the members by granting the right to have the agenda setting with us, but we can then delegate it. But it still seems like, why can't we satisfy everyone by if we're independent, we have the right to set the agenda, but we can still delegate, and we're going to work with staff, and we're not going to direct you to put things on the agenda right away. We obviously understand that. So I don't understand why we can't write that in the bylaws.
I agree. And I think, having a standard that says nothing with any factual errors in it ever gets into a public record seems like a standard that exceeds anything that any public body.
So should we knowingly let it into public record though? If
No, it doesn't work that way. It's if the author makes a mistake, I mean, certainly they can offer and it can be corrected at the meeting, but saying that there's a gatekeeping responsibility that to the extent you believe there's anything factually inaccurate about what any other member in an independent committee can submit from getting into the record, that doesn't sound right.
So with board meetings is a perfect example. Prior to anything going to the board and being submitted and put into the board documents, right? There is a process that we use to check that. Is it always perfect? Absolutely not. But what we don't do is we don't take a document at a once over that maybe have inaccuracies and just upload it. There's a process before it goes to the board. This is no different. The reality is you can argue that things with mistakes do make it into the public record, and you'd be absolutely right. But it is our responsibility as staff to limit that as much as we can. We shouldn't knowingly allow documents that are inaccurate to be uploaded into the public record.
Sure.
I was just going to add that, also this review of the bylaws and the guidelines, I mean, that is a pretty rich agenda item. And you have suggested that it's here. It's kind of tough to do them all at once, right? Because it's complicated, a lot of people involved. Now there's editing.
Right,
fact checking, and then eventually it gets on the agenda, as will hopefully Oxford.
right.
I mean, it's all in due time, right? I
No,
mean,
that's fine. I still don't understand though
Okay.
why we can't have the right to set our own agenda. Like we can still delegate it. I mean, we can still have control there. I mean,
Right. It sounds like we're in an impasse, though. I don't think we're gonna.
Right, well-
I don't feel like we're moving any. I don't feel like.
yeah,
that's
let's
fine.
move
I just want
on.
to hear, I mean, what is that saying? So Alejandro, Cheryl, you're opposed to us having that right, even if we can delegate it.
You
I don't feel like we don't have the power, if you will, to add things to the agenda.
Yeah,
Why don't we? Can we
I
just
don't
go into
think
a
we have
vote
a
and we'll go
problem
on?
with it, three of
I
us.
don't wanna, I don't want people to put words in my mouth. I'm not opposing to anything.
Can we
I'm
just put it
just
to a vote
saying-
then?
I'm just saying, can I finish my sentence?
Sorry.
What we're saying with Cheryl, and I think Wade agrees as well, is that we don't have an issue with the current process right now. We're not opposed to us writing our agenda, but that's not our job right now. And I don't know why. I mean, that's probably the words that the way that I can explain it, right? So I'm not opposing to anything.
Okay, thank you.
Damien, when you and I talked a couple weeks ago, I think, at the end of the duties of secretary and the end of duties of the chair, there is a sentence.
Right, it's right there. Yeah.
Remind me what that says. The secretary may request, right there, aid from the district in the performance of their duties. I mean, if we are truly, according to the California CBOC guidelines, truly allowed to be independent in the manner of creating our own agenda, it seems to me that that would be the only line we would need to add to create the agenda creation process, would be to go ahead and put a line like that right underneath agenda creation process, so that we do get to create our own agenda, but that we are working with the district. We've discussed before that the district has agenda items that they also need to add and include. So there has to be some significant coordination between. I also personally am very grateful and very thankful that that we get a very well run meeting because the agenda has been well created by the district. So I don't certainly want to do that. I love that you might want to do that, but you may not always be on the committee. And then, so that's where I'm troubled. I want to be more independent. I don't want to be told where to look, how much to look, how little to look. I don't like how that feels, but I have great respect and appreciation for the people who are leading us and the people who are the staff that we're working with. So it's sort of two things. It's like we're creating a document for the future, for other committees to look to know how, and some committees may never even know they're supposed to be independent. And I think we need to remind them that they are. I think that does matter. So this, to me, this conversation is really important in that sense. Thank you.
It's well said. So this is a discussion item, I believe.
That's what I would vote on. I would vote on adding that line. Ken mentioned we should take a vote. I'm curious what it is we would be voting on, and
Well,
we kick
yeah.
this to the next meeting, which I'm perfectly happy to do. But maybe for me, it would be adding a line just like that into the bottom of this.
Yeah, I did.
Right, I would vote on something that was like resolved, resolved, the committee believes that it is independent, and a key part of its independence is the right to set its own agenda. And we would just vote on that proposition, and then we would know, like stop moving forward, or we could lay it to rest.
With aid from the district, I think a co-creative process or something like that with aid from the district. I'm comfortable personally with that language.
Okay, I'd be fine with that too.
Okay. Therefore, moving forward then, you want me to tweak this slightly? Is that what you're saying? Section 18.
When you and I talked a couple weeks ago, we weren't convinced. I wasn't convinced that we would resolve this tonight, unfortunately, but I don't think we need to hurry through something as important as this.
That's right.
Why don't we send this to everyone, or to Shanita to send to everyone? to Carol, and then we can look at what it is we think we're voting on and see if the district is cool with that, staff, and let's try to find some common ground to assure our independence, but understanding that we do need to cohabitate on this thing. That's my.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here, here.
And Ken or Cheryl or Alejandro, if you ideally right now, if you have any initial thoughts on 18 that you want me to change, I can have, but it's harder to do this after the meeting. In other words, if I email you, it's, you can email me back, but it's awkward to do it.
I would use Wade's language.
That extra line there, yes.
I agree. I think it has to be a collective work. I don't think we're independent in the sense that we don't belong to the district, and I agree. I think Cheryl mentioned that, and I think I agree with that. But so far, I don't think we have any issues bringing items to the agenda. Maybe the timing, it's the complicated part of it, because it's a bunch of topics that we have to discuss and we have to go through. Yeah.
Right, and we're also doing this within an hour and a half, and things happen. Here we are, we have, 14 minutes left, or I think, something like that.
Okay, so the bottom line there in 16 and 17, I'll add something like the bottom line, that bottom line right there, to section 18, and I'll tweak it up a little more, and we can vote on it next meeting. How's that sound for everybody?
That's good.
I think it
Okay.
sounds like a good
That sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
idea. Thank you very much, Damien, for putting the effort into
No,
that.
and I think that's fair to say. I think we appreciate you guys coming into the committee and bringing accountability. And not that we haven't had it, but I think the language, it's important, and what we say in these meetings is public record. So we need to be clear about it. I like I said, I don't disagree with the idea of us creating the agenda and our independence, but I think I appreciate you guys bringing these new thoughts into our conversation here.
Sweet.
All
Cool.
right, I'm gonna.
What's next? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back and kind of find my way. So is there anything else with guidelines that anyone wants to discuss? Or are we tabling guidelines and bylaws? We had them as two separate items in the agenda. And so I just want to make sure that we understand what our steps forward are on each item.
I would like to speak about just 2 or 3 minutes on the guidelines. And I'm on the wrong screen. Okay, just to show the other members what I've written down here. What I tried to do was show us, simplify, and put in this document. This is not just for us, it's for any of the future members as well, that says what our task is. And so I think task number 1, 2, and 3 are the simplified version of what the ed code tells us to do. So then I go through in those bullet points below that, how we do 1, 2, and 3. And the first 2 are, what I view is the first 2 as being kind of, as in making sure they're only spent on projects listed in the measure. And the measure is written very broadly. So it's almost going to be impossible that we're going to have any issue with number 1. And for number 2, not spent on salaries. Again, there's an audit we review and we look at that. And so I don't view 1 and 2 as taking up the majority of our time. It's hard. And then so therefore number 3 says how we maximize bond revenues. And the ed code has a number of suggestions here. I threw some questions here that we might want to ask about each project. Not each project, okay, but ones that we're interested in. Those are some suggestions that I came up with, things that now I had a project in mind when I was thinking about this. I had 1 or 2 projects in mind when I was thinking about this, and that's what those questions are there. And then if you keep on scrolling, then I discussed about we're independent, okay? So I think that helps a future committee, helps us, I believe. You can keep on scrolling. And the next one is about communication. It's useful. This is an issue I've had with the district a little bit. There's been the legal presentation that we received last spring told us that we could not, it discouraged us from sending things to each other. And I went back and looked at the minutes, and that's what the presentation was about. And she was actually wrong. And this is another issue of being independent, as in, if you don't have independent counsel, the council works the district and they have the district's best interest in mind. And therefore they say, watch out for the Brown Act, don't talk to each other effectively. When we actually are allowed to email documents to everyone, we can't reply all, and that we can reply all with the word thanks, for example. We can't reply all with something that leads to like doing business, okay? Developing a concurrence, in other words, can't do that. So I think we can appreciate nuance. I think we can do that. I think what Kelly told me in an email was that she discouraged, or the district discourages sending documents among members because they're worried we might forget and then reply all. And I don't find that the right way to approach that. That seems to me a more discouragement of our oversight. And so again, coming back to independence, I wanted to put that in writing. So that's what I put this whole communication aspect here, saying that we are allowed to email each other. Just don't develop a concurrence and don't do business on email. So I think we can all appreciate the nuance. So then the ed code is pasted below that. And that's about it for that document. This document is something that is just hopefully helpful to us as we do our oversight duty. That's the point of it. I think that's all that needs to be said about it, unless y'all have any questions about it, by the way. This is me clarifying my thoughts, but.
Okay. I mean, do we have anywhere specific to go with this agenda item? Does this send it a
No.
vote or?
No, just an information item, I suppose.
Is this something we will want to vote on next time? Is that where we're going with this?
You mean to adopt it? I'm not sure if we have to adopt it. I don't know. It's just the document.
That's my question.
Oh yeah, I see. So we could, you're right, we could put this on the district's website, or sorry, on our website, suppose, if we wanted to.
Right, I would like to adopt something like this, but I think that we should probably have a vote that indicates that everybody is through discussing it, you know, that you know, to move the item, essentially.
Right.
So it sounds like this is part of the agenda, that this is part of the next meeting. Would everybody on the committee be able to read through this and make comments?
Yeah, I guess well, how should we make comments? Do you want to have it?
Certainly don't reply all with the.
Right.
Right. I think we have to make our comments and have them ready to, you know, and be ready to discuss the next meeting.
Okay.
That would be excellent. I really appreciate what you've done here. I think this is a terrific guideline for newcomers, even for me, to remind us what we're trying to achieve, why we're here, what we're doing. Very useful. I'm not certain that every question has to be on there, or necessarily. We could get a little bit more. We could clean it up possibly, but a lot of really good work, Damien, here. So what do you guys think? Cheryl, Alejandro, what do you guys think?
I agree. I think it's helpful. We can review it and we can have comments next time. Is this something for the district to review?
No, not really.
So the bylaws are board bylaws that were created for this district, for this committee, because this is a statutory committee of the board. So any changes to the bylaws will have to go to the board.
Right. So this document's not then.
Honestly, that's a question for legal, only because this does impact the bylaws in some ways. So I'm not telling you that it does, but I won't tell you that it doesn't. It's that I have to ask legal that. I
Independent
don't
legal
think
counsel?
so, because it's sort of guidelines. It's sort of like an operating procedure, but I'm not going to tell you that with certainty.
So you can get back.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you guys can get back to us on that question next time. Right.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was going to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then we are going to go ahead and attempt to move on here. So agenda making process, I know we beat this to death, but we do need to somewhat standardize what we've been doing to date and keep it until there is a decision otherwise. So in light of that, I just put together this quick draft of the calendar showing the deadlines for each item. So on our upcoming meeting on April 19th, we've got, I'm going to work forward back to 19 now and say that the draft agenda would go to the committee for review. And like we've talked about, the draft agenda is anything that you folks have mentioned, anything we think might be important to move forward. And then you can add things. And then you would get that week to add things to the agenda. Those agenda requests would be received on the 8th. And then that would allow staff a week to do due diligence and getting those items agendized and getting the documents that they need prepared. And then the latest that your agenda can go out is the 15th. I know we attempt to get it out in earnest, but that's the latest. If we have staff out of town or something like that, we might release it a little earlier, might move this whole process up a tiny bit, but we will make sure to always give this committee a week to take a look at those documents and ask questions about what they would like to have on the agenda. So for the time being, I would just want to review that with you and let you know that that's what we'll be doing for the next meeting. And then I know that there's further discussion.
So Kelly, real quick, we have 5 minutes left. Item number 8 absolutely has to be done if we're going to continue these meetings virtual.
Yeah.
And I would be remiss to not mention that Cheryl Drinkwater has served this committee, the district, and this community for many years. I don't know how many off the top of my head, but this is her last meeting, and I wanted to thank her for everything that she's done. And obviously, as we've talked about, Cheryl, you walk by my office all the time, you said, so you're welcome to stop by. I'd encourage you to do so. But yeah, just I want to say thank you, and I wanted to point out the action item on number 8, which does need to get brought up.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, John. Yeah, it's been a great experience, and it's been about 5 years, and I have so many other things I'm working on for the community I need to kind of focus on right now. So thank you. Yeah.
Wow,
Thanks,
thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl.
Yeah, I'll miss you guys.
We'll meet you.
So shall we vote?
Yeah, go ahead. We're going to skip 7, but we really covered it in earlier discussions. So let's go ahead and go for a vote. You had a resolution in your packet to extend the Zoom meetings. If I can get a first.
So we're just on that, I would love to stop meeting over Zoom. I mean, I'm on the phone right now and I'm in the car. So I obviously, I value the ability to be able to, quote unquote, phone it in. But I do miss, I think we're missing, I think when we don't meet in person, we miss a key element of what it means to work together. And I think we sideline a certain part of our brain that really does allow us to focus and single track and devote our total attention to something. And so, I mean, I think I'm going to vote no on extending Zoom. I know that it probably won't be that way, but I mean, I do that because I really would like to meet in person. And I think even though it is, even though this is so much more convenient, I think that we owe it to ourselves and to each other. And I think we give each other that extra bit of respect when we get ourselves physically somewhere, on time, that once a month to devote our full attention to it. Thanks. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. My personal comment, this is a personal comment, is that Governor Newsom needs to unproclaim the state of emergency. I think it's time. I'm hopeful that that happens very, very soon. If we are going to go to a meeting in person, which I think would be great, we may have to look at our schedule again because I'm out of town a lot. So that's all I would say about that. Thank you.
Yeah, this is just by the month. This is just 1 month. So the intent would be to get back together perhaps in the next month.
I feel like this might be our best opportunity to get back together. Like, we could be whatever,
So
I don't know how good I am at Greek alphabet, Rho, Phi, Chi, Psi, some other variant could put the kibosh on that between now and then.
So Ken, I'm actually a huge proponent of in-person meetings, and we are at time. So not in looking to cut anybody's comments short, but I would suggest putting it to a vote. And if you would all prefer to actually meet next time in person, then please vote no. If you would prefer to meet next time on Zoom and discuss this again, please vote yes, and we can
Let's do it.
for the future
All right.
meeting.
Sounds
All
good.
right, do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I can second if you need it.
Okay, did we have a first already? I lost count.
Well,
I'm
I'll,
sorry.
I'll move that we take it to a vote, yeah.
Okay, so member Berlin has a first and Drinkwater has a second. Okay, I believe a resolution needs a roll call vote.
It does.
All right, okay, member Park.
May I ask quickly what the date of the next meeting is? We don't have that, right? I know we gotta go.
Yes, we do have it.
Right, we do.
Oh yeah, it's on the agenda. I'm sorry, it's not on this particular slide. Hold on.
April
one moment.
19th.
19th.
There we go.
Okay, all right, great.
All
Vote
right.
no. Vote no.
Okay, so member Park is a no. Member Skills.
I'll vote no.
All right, member Pimentel,
I will know.
Chair Drinkwater.
I would like to abstain.
Oh, okay, since you, that makes
sense.
sense. And member Berlin.
I vote no.
Great, see you in person.
All right,
right.
motion does not carry. And we will be seeing you in person. I think, John, we'll probably have to plan the logistics on that and email the committee with location details and stuff like that in the coming days.
Yeah,
Thank you in
it'll
advance, John.
it'll be held, I'm sure, at Parker Street in the
Yeah.
conference room, but yeah.
All right, we'll get all that information to you in the future. And I believe that is it for tonight.
Cool.
Thank you guys for working so hard. Great meeting. Thank you, staff. You guys do a
All
great.
right, I move to adjourn.
Okay, I second.
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye. Thank you,
All
everybody.
right, thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good
Good
night.
Thank you,
night.
everybody.
Cheryl,
Thanks for
Bye.
everything.
Much,
Cheryl.
Thank you.
Hey,
Bye,
Cheryl.
thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you. Bye.